So with that, we'll go on to the awards ceremony.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. General Meyer, General Gaylord, General Boone, family, and friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 2019 Public Affairs Awards ceremony. This year, we recognize top honor winners in the 2018 Major General Keith L. Ware Communication Awards competition, as well as the 2018 and 2019 classes of the Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame. The Major General Keith L. Ware Communication Awards competition recognizes public affairs and visual information soldiers and Department of the Army civilian employees for excellence in communicating Army initiatives and telling the Army story. On behalf of the Secretary of the Army, the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs conducts the annual competition to recognize, cultivate, and inspire excellence within the Army public affairs and visual information communities. The level of talent resident in our communities was evident by the quality of the entries in this year's competition. A special thanks to our distinguished leaders who served as judges. The 2018 Major General Keith L. Ware Communication Awards competition top honors winners are: the Military Photographer of the Year is Specialist Adeline Witherspoon, 2nd Sustainment Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division. The Civilian Photographer of the Year is Mr. David E. Poe, Fort Bliss Public Affairs Office. Mr. Poe was not able to attend. The Civilian Graphic Designer of the Year is Ms. Gwen Bausmith, Europe District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Ms. Bausmith is not able to join us today, so Mr. John Tomasi, Deputy Public Affairs Director of U.S. Army Europe, is receiving on her behalf. The John T. Anderson Military Videographer of the Year is Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Runser, Indiana National Guard Headquarters. The James P. Hunter Award for Outstanding New Writer is Sergeant Michel Blessum, 49th Public Affairs Detachment. Sergeant Blessum is currently on mission outside the U.S., so Sergeant First Class Jason Hull, NCOIC of the 49th Pad, is here to receive on her behalf. The Rising Star Award for Outstanding Videographer is Staff Sergeant Alexander C. Henninger, Defense Media Activity. Staff Sergeant Henninger is currently on mission, so his award will be presented to him at another time. The Public Affairs Officer Rising Star of the Year is Captain Nadine DeMora, 100th MPAD, Texas National Guard. She is on annual tour in the Dominican Republic and will not be joining us today. The Kathy Canham-Ross Award of Distinction winner is Mr. Mike Chrisman, Illinois National Guard. Mr. Chrisman is not able to be here today, so Ms. Barb Wilson is receiving on his behalf. The 2018 Army Storyteller of the Year, our highest award, is Master Sergeant Michel Sauret, 200th Military Police Command. Please extend a warm round of applause for all of our 2018 Keith L. Ware winners. The U.S. Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame was established to provide a visual means of recognizing and honoring soldiers and civilian public affairs professionals who made lasting, significant contributions to the profession, the history, and the traditions of Army public affairs. The Hall of Fame program serves to educate and inspire the current generation of public affairs practitioners through the achievements and history of their forebears. Since its creation in 2000, more than 50 individuals have been inducted into the Hall of Fame for their exemplary efforts in peacetime and war, including service during combat operations in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, the Cold War, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. This year, we recognize 5 who have served their country and our public affairs community with distinction. Mr. Don Carr, please join us on stage. Having served in the Army Public Affairs career field in uniform and as an Army civilian for more than 42 years, Mr. Carr retired as the Director of Public Affairs for the U.S. Army Garrison, Fort Belvoir, Virginia. A renowned Army newspaperman, he served from unit level to headquarters, Department of the Army, editing no less than 11 Army newspapers and magazines during his Army career, and serving as the Chief of Army Newspapers and Director of Army News Operations at the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs. Upon retiring from the Army, Mr. Carr continued serving as a DA civilian, starting as editor of the Belvoir Eagle and later Command Information Chief at the U.S. Army Garrison, Fort Belvoir, where he led and mentored the Belvoir Eagle staff to excellence, resulting in the paper's selection as the best newspaper in DoD and a DoD Journalist of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Don Carr, Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame, Class of 2018. Our second inductee is Mr. John Donovan. Mr. Donovan, please join us on stage. As Chief of the Public Affairs Civilian Career Field, Mr. Donovan strove to build a career program that was effective, equitable, and credible, leading a force of information and editorial professionals numbering at the time more than 3,000. Mr. Donovan personally developed one of the finest professional development programs in the Army, thereby ensuring the training and advancement of quality career public affairs officers. Further, he oversaw the complete overhaul of an obsolete and cumbersome skills, knowledges, and professional development system in the late 80s, launching a more efficient evaluation and education process that ensured Army civilian PAOs were properly prepared for assignments. Devoted to raising the profile of the Army public affairs professional, Mr. Donovan is co-authored of Raising Our Voice, The History of U.S. Army Public Affairs, Volume 1, and has spent 45 years and counting in mass communication. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Donovan, Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame, Class of 2018. Our third inductee is Captain Thomas Hope. Unfortunately, Captain Hope passed away in 2017, so he is represented by his son, Mr. Dana Hope. Mr. Hope, please join us on stage. Initially serving in the enlisted ranks as a movie cameraman assigned to the 1st Special Service Force, Captain Hope's expert knowledge of video techniques resulted in sweeping feet and knees together changes to parachute landing techniques in the early 1940s, now called the parachute landing fall, or PLF, that are still used today over 75 years later. After completing officer candidate school, he reported to the Army Motion Picture School in Queens, New York, part of the Signal Corps Photographic Center, also known as the Army Pictorial Center, where he trained and mentored thousands of photographers before assuming duties as the school director while still a second lieutenant. During World War II, he led photo and video teams covering 2nd Infantry Division, 4th Infantry Division, 8th Infantry Division, 82nd Airborne Division, and 101st Airborne Division operations throughout Germany and France, including historic photos of victorious Soviet troops at the landmark Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. By the time of the German surrender, Hope had advanced in rank to captain and had hundreds of historic photos and films to his credit. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Thomas Hope, Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame, Class of 2018. Please join us in one last round of applause for the Public Affairs Hall of Fame Class of 2018 inductees. Mr. Joe Garvey, please join us on stage. Initially an enlisted Army broadcaster, Mr. Joe Garvey served 30 years in Army Public Affairs and retired as the Deputy Director of Public Affairs at U.S. Army Europe. Mr. Garvey's professional skills and expertise promulgated U.S. Army strategic interests throughout Europe, directly impacting relations with host nation leaders in Germany and Italy, as well as USARC response efforts to the Russian annexation of Ukraine. A mentor to thousands of public affairs professionals and multiple general officers, his influence is evident through the more than 200 Ware awards received by USARC personnel, the professional development of the Civilian Public Affairs Corps in Europe, and the host of protégés who have risen to the ranks of colonel and sergeant major. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Garvey, Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame, Class of 2019. Colonel James Weiskopf, please join us on stage. Colonel James Weiskopf served in Army Public Affairs for more than half of his 26 years on active duty, retiring as the Director of Public Affairs for the U.S. Military District of Washington. During his time as a public affairs officer, Colonel Weiskopf established practices and programs that are still in place today, more than 45 years after he put them in place. His innovation and drive elevated Army outreach efforts to never-before-seen levels during multiple assignments, and as the Professional Development Branch Chief for the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs, Weiskopf established the first Training with Industry internship for public affairs and directly influenced the establishment of the Sergeant Major of Public Affairs position. Exercising leadership and mentorship throughout his career, Colonel Weiskopf left a legacy of senior public affairs officers, both military and civilian. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel James Weiskopf, Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame, Class of 2019. Please join us in one last round of applause for the Class of 2019 Public Affairs Hall of Fame inductees. Honorees, distinguished guests, family members, and public affairs professionals, this concludes our 2019 Keith L. Ware and Army Public Affairs Hall of Fame recognition ceremony.